They showed my $500 shoes and nearly $1,000 suit and ruined it in the shower.
Behind The Undertaker's legendary persona lies a far darker reality, a story shaped by power, manipulation, and a long history of abuse that quietly permeated wrestling's most infamous era.
Mark, how many guys you think you got fired? You're number one in my book, motherfucker.
From firing people to showing blatant favoritism, The Undertaker isn't the hero many fans imagine, and his story is far more chaotic than most realize. Mark William Calloway's journey through wrestling's territorial system was difficult from the start, as he moved between promotions under different personas like Texas Red in World-Class Championship Wrestling, the Master of Pain in the Continental Wrestling Association, and Mean Mark Callis in World Championship Wrestling. These early years shaped the mindset that would later influence his backstage behavior, fostering a belief in survival of the fittest, respect through intimidation, and a strict adherence to old-school wrestling values. When Calloway finally signed with the World Wrestling Federation in October 1990 and debuted as Kane the Undertaker at Survivor Series, everything changed immediately, as the supernatural character crafted by Vince McMahon resonated with audiences in a way few gimmicks ever had. Within a year, at just 26, he became the youngest WWF champion at the time by defeating Hulk Hogan at Survivor Series 1991, but that victory came at a hidden cost, exposing the political maneuvering behind the scenes and providing the first clear glimpse of the manipulative environment that would follow Calloway throughout his career, with the Hogan incident serving as an early lesson in the ruthless nature of the wrestling world.
So, it started out what was going on.
Before the match even began, Hogan expressed concerns about taking the tombstone piledriver, repeatedly pointing to his neck and referencing a previous injury, while the young Undertaker, anxious yet determined to prove he deserved such a monumental moment, promised to protect wrestling's biggest star, assuring Hogan that his head would not hit the mat and that the move would be executed with complete control and precision.
He goes, "Hey, I got this neck injury." He says,
Finish unfolded when Ric Flair slid a steel chair into the ring, giving The Undertaker the opportunity to hit his signature tombstone piledriver onto it, and when Calloway says he had Hogan protected, he truly means it, as Hogan was held more securely than Fort Knox, yet the instant Undertaker's knees touched the mat, something completely unexpected occurred.
Boom. I give him the tombstone. As soon as my knees hit, I hear, "Oh, you got me, brother."
My neck and my back.
I'm like,
my back.
yeah, I am just like, how, I'm like, you have all these, like, I was 24, 25 years old, and, I just crushed Hulk Hogan, right?
The panic that gripped the young Undertaker in that moment was entirely real, as he felt crushed and humiliated, convinced he had just ended the career of wrestling's biggest star while simultaneously ruining his own future. Backstage in Vince McMahon's office, Hogan lay on the floor surrounded by paramedics, dramatically insisting someone call his wife and kids as if he were facing a life-threatening injury. But the story takes a darker turn here, because when the footage was reviewed, it clearly showed that Hogan's head never touched the chair or the mat. He had actually lifted his head during the move to avoid any impact. Shane McMahon even pointed this out to the shaken Undertaker, but by that point, the psychological damage and humiliation had already taken their toll.
Shane's right there telling me, he's like, "Mark," he goes, "his head wasn't anywhere close to touching that mat." And I'm like, "No, man," I just couldn't hear it. I was like, "No, man, I heard him. I don't know what, I couldn't put a thought together. I just thought I'd killed him."
Just 6 days later, at the hastily organized Tuesday in Texas pay-per-view, Hogan defeated The Undertaker to reclaim the championship, and when Calloway finally confronted Hogan about what the footage clearly showed, the response was both shocking and infuriating. Hogan insisted the injury had occurred because Undertaker had supposedly held him too tightly, claiming the pressure from his knees had crushed his head and jammed his neck on impact, turning the entire situation into a textbook example of manipulation, with a seasoned veteran protecting his position at all costs, even if it meant slowing down a rising talent and exposing him to the harsh realities of wrestling politics.
And at that point, then I was like, okay. Then I knew, I was like, okay. I kind of realized, okay, I know what you're all about. And that's all I needed,
This incident, while straining their relationship and creating what insiders call genuine heat between them, became Mark Calloway's true education in wrestling politics, showing him exactly how far someone would go to protect their position, how easily the truth could be manipulated, and how power decided who was believed and who took the fall, a lesson he absorbed completely, perhaps even too thoroughly. Over the years, Hogan's own accounts of the event shifted repeatedly, from claiming the move caused years of numbness nearly requiring disc fusion surgery, to saying his skull hit the chair because of sweat or a simple mistake, to finally admitting in a 2014 deposition that parts of his books weren't accurate, and these constant revisions only confirmed what Calloway learned that night in Detroit. In professional wrestling, perception often outweighs reality, and those with power can shape the story however they choose. The tragic twist, however, is that instead of rejecting the manipulation he witnessed from Hogan, Undertaker eventually mastered those same tactics over the next 3 decades, using his rising influence and close relationship with Vince McMahon to create and enforce an environment that many former wrestlers now describe as organized bullying, harsh hazing, and an abuse of authority, a far cry from the young man who once felt heartbroken for supposedly injuring Hulk Hogan. He went on to run a backstage court system, even slapping his own tag team partner, Big Show, during their match at SummerSlam 1999 for failing to follow his advice, and often presided over countless wrestler court sessions that left grown men and women in tears, with his opinion alone capable of making or breaking careers over something as trivial as refusing to join him for drinks after a show. The Undertaker's in-ring legacy is undeniably legendary, with 4 WWE championships, 3 World Heavyweight Championships, the iconic WrestleMania streak, and a career spanning 4 decades. Yet the story behind the persona reveals a man whose concept of respect evolved into a system based on fear, whose devotion to old-school traditions turned into resistance against necessary change, and whose influence was often used not for the betterment of the business but to protect a hierarchy favoring those already at the top while holding back those trying to rise. And this is just the beginning of understanding the Undertaker's tragic reality, not the character who retired in 2020, but the man whose backstage behavior created an environment that many wrestlers are only now finding the courage to discuss, encompassing the judge, the court, and the cruelty, because if the Hogan incident revealed WWE's backstage manipulation, that was merely the tip of the iceberg. While Mark Calloway was learning the ins and outs of wrestling politics in the early 1990s, he was also building something far more dangerous, a hidden judicial system that would intimidate WWE locker rooms for over a decade. This was Wrestler's Court, with The Undertaker acting as its unforgiving judge, jury, and at times, executioner. Wrestler's Court operated like a kangaroo court, usually held in private spaces like hotel bars or airplanes during long tours, enforcing unwritten locker room rules with charges brought by veterans for minor infractions such as forgetting to shake hands, displaying a bad attitude, or failing to integrate quickly into the established hierarchy. Wearing a do-rag and carrying himself like a real-life Judge Dredd, The Undertaker presided as the main judge for years, while figures like John Bradshaw Layfield acted as prosecutors, often exaggerating accusations to publicly embarrass whoever was on trial. What some attempted to frame as team bonding or teaching respect has since been heavily criticized as organized hazing that fostered a toxic old boys club culture. The punishments in Wrestler's Court typically escalated depending on a wrestler's position on the card, with bigger names like Brock Lesnar or Roman Reigns often able to avoid or lessen the consequences, while rookies at the bottom faced financial penalties, public humiliation, or physical stress that reinforced the power imbalance, and sometimes even led to ruined careers or early departures. The sessions were deliberately intimidating, with Kane often acting as bailiff and explaining that survival required offering as little defense as possible. Stay quiet, don't make things worse, have some whiskey, apologize, and you might get through unscathed. Bribes, usually bottles of Jack Daniels, Undertaker's favorite, could reduce the severity of punishments, but refusal often made things worse. The system thrived on the old boys club hierarchy, where veterans like Undertaker, JBL, Bob Holly, and Ron Simmons held all the power, while rookies were presumed guilty and trials served as harsh initiation rituals. One of the most troubling aspects was how The Undertaker treated female wrestlers and staff. During a WWE UK tour in the mid-2000s, former cruiserweight champion Paul London recalled being woken around 2 a.m. and forced to attend a wrestler's court session, where Undertaker, acting as judge, allegedly yelled at a female staff member or wrestler until she cried over what London described as trivial or petty complaints. London has openly condemned Wrestler's Court, calling it a joke and a waste of time that disrupted rest during exhausting tours, while emphasizing the absurdity and cruelty of forcing someone to break down emotionally in front of a group.
And I remember Undertaker was out there stretching, and he was like, "You did real good in there." I was like, "Like that? Like that?" Like, he was like, "You didn't sell it. You held your ground. That was real good."
But London's relationship with The Undertaker quickly soured over an even more trivial issue. After initially praising London for standing up to Bubba Dudley's homophobic taunts and bullying, Undertaker turned against him for the smallest reason. London had refused a drink from him, only to accept one from someone else shortly afterward.
So I remember I took like one shot, and that's like when Undertaker just happened to be walking back around. He's like, huh. So if I'm not good enough for you to drink with, like who here is good? Who is, who I was just like, oh, it's not like that. Like, oh God. And I tried to explain it to him. He's like, don't worry about it. He walks off.
The punishment for London's perceived slight was immediate and humiliating. The next morning, the entire locker room tab, totaling around $500, was placed on his bill, orchestrated by Bubba Dudley in what London described as a blatant attempt to curry favor with The Undertaker. It was petty, vindictive, and a clear example of how wrestlers' court turned personal grudges into collective punishment. In a similar incident during an Australian tour, Undertaker presided over a session for Molina, a former WWE diva, who was accused of causing backstage drama related to her relationships with Batista and conflicts with Booker T's wife, Charmel, with wrestlers reportedly betting on how long it would take JBL to make her cry during the proceedings. Undertaker later described the session as taking a serious emotional toll, with tears being shed. Perhaps no case better illustrates the systematic nature of his abuse than what happened to René Dupree, a French-Canadian wrestler who signed with WWE in 2002 at just 18, making him the youngest wrestler in company history at the time. The conflict arose around 2004-2005 while Dupree was on the SmackDown roster. Being underage, he couldn't legally rent a car in the U.S., so he traveled with Hardcore Holly in a rental registered under Holly's name. During this period, Dupree allegedly received multiple speeding tickets, which he discarded after consulting someone, assuming WWE would handle them, but the tickets were later charged to Holly, causing unexpected fees and frustration. The situation escalated to wrestlers' court, where Dupree was found guilty of disrespecting a senior wrestler, and as punishment, Holly was allegedly allowed to shoot on him during a house show match on November 21, 2004, meaning he delivered real, hard hits beyond the scripted cooperation of the match. During the match, Holly assaulted Dupree with stiff punches, kicks, and even a real chair shot to the head, leaving him with a concussion, bruises, a black eye, and a hematoma that burst on the flight home, while the locker room reportedly knew it was coming, with wrestlers like Kenzo Suzuki and Rey Mysterio warning him to brace himself. Dupree attempted to flee backstage mid-match, but Holly chased him, and WWE fined Holly $10,000, though management reportedly agreed with the lesson. Beyond the in-ring attack, Dupree claims The Undertaker ordered further hazing during a European tour after Dupree hadn't joined a drinking session the night before, ironically, because no one invited him, creating what he called a no-win situation. Wrestlers reportedly destroyed his expensive belongings, including $500 shoes and a $1,000 suit, in the shower, and the next night in Italy, they escalated by taking his French flag, a symbol of his heritage, shoving it into a toilet, and urinating and defecating on it. Dupree described this as racial discrimination, saying it was deeply hurtful beyond the material loss. They took my French flag, my heritage. They shoved it in a toilet and pissed all over it. I don't know what world you live in, but in my world that's called racial discrimination. That was really hurtful. When seeking guidance, he first went to agent Aaron Anderson, who advised him, don't sell it, meaning don't react or show weakness. This was a common wrestling mantra for surviving hazing, but when Dupree confronted The Undertaker directly, he was told, well, you find out who does it, before Undertaker admitted he had ordered the abuse simply because Dupree hadn't gone drinking with him and the others, revealing himself as the orchestrator who used his authority to enforce social compliance through humiliation. These incidents were far from isolated. Undertaker once made a rookie drink 40 shots for allegedly stealing attention from Lex Luger's companion, framing it as a lesson in respect while risking serious health consequences. He forced Dustin Rhodes to buy whiskey to pay the judge, and banned him from bars for wasting a shot during WWE's financial struggles. The Miz was made to change in closets for months after spilling chicken on Chris Benoit's bag, a clear example of rookie hazing for not fitting in, and the Hardy Boys were forced to buy Jack Daniels for sitting in first class at Michael Hayes' prompting. Breaking hierarchy rules carried consequences regardless of who gave the advice. Muhammad Hassan faced multiple trials and a $2,000 bar tab for perceived disrespect due to his low status and controversial gimmick, making him an easy target, while Raven was punished with 2 months of silence in the locker room, a torment for someone naturally talkative. Even Undertaker's friends weren't exempt. He oversaw a case where Mick Foley and Al Snow left Bob Holly stranded at an airport and ordered them to cover Holly's expenses, around $500, which reportedly enraged the notoriously frugal Foley. Teddy Long was punished for selling Viagra samples to wrestlers by being forced to buy beer and Kentucky Fried Chicken for a month, an expensive penalty for what was essentially a harmless side hustle. Critics, including former wrestlers and media outlets, argue that Wrestlers' Court fostered a culture of bullying, where hazing was disguised as tradition and often led to extortion and coercion. Outsiders were excluded from the system, with women like Molina facing extra scrutiny in male-dominated proceedings, and punishments were harsher for lower-status wrestlers, fueling resentment and contributing to departures such as Muhammad Hassan's. While some accounts highlight Undertaker helping wrestlers like The Miz against JBL's bullying, his role as the main enforcer ties him directly to the system's darker side. Undertaker has defended Wrestlers' Court, claiming it prevented fights and maintained respect, stating that 99.5% of his peers would vouch he never abused his power, dismissing accusations as jealous online trolling. Yet when multiple former wrestlers recount consistent stories of humiliation, financial exploitation, and emotional abuse, it becomes impossible to see it as mere building character or paying dues. This was systematic and orchestrated. At the center of it all, wearing his do-rag like a crown and wielding his whiskey bottle like a scepter, was Mark Calaway, the Undertaker, the man who learned from Hulk Hogan's manipulation and refined it into an entire culture of control. But Wrestlers' Court was only one part of his tragic legacy, as his influence extended into booking decisions, blatant favoritism toward family, and an unwavering loyalty to Vince McMahon, even in the face of serious criminal allegations, showing power, nepotism, and loyalty taken to an extreme. To understand the full tragic legacy of Mark Calaway, it's important to examine how his decades-long relationship with Vince McMahon gave him influence that extended far beyond locker room discipline, allowing him to allegedly use power for personal gain, advance the careers of friends and family, and maintain loyalty even when it became morally questionable. Calaway's close bond with McMahon, often described as father-son, reportedly gave him veto power over storylines and matches, a level of control beyond what would normally be earned through years of service. Critics claim he used this influence to shape booking decisions that favored his character and legacy over the company's broader needs, and, more importantly, over the opportunities of other deserving talent. One notable example is his 2001 feud with Diamond Dallas Page, where Calaway allegedly leveraged his clout to frame DDP, a WCW import, as a stalker targeting Calaway's then-wife Sarah, culminating in a match where Sarah pinned the WCW champion, a move critics saw as burying DDP to elevate Calaway's persona, reflecting a pattern of squashing rivals to maintain dominance. While WWE's creative team ultimately made the decisions, Undertaker's input and approval were reportedly key, with little regard for how the storylines affected others' careers. Calaway has also been accused of pushing for the hiring or retention of friends like Bryan Adams and Brian Clark, members of his Bone Street crew, while allegedly influencing the firings or demotions of those who crossed him or his allies. As a senior figure, he also enforced unwritten rules, such as banning video games in the locker room to promote focus on wrestling, further demonstrating the reach of his authority. While some see this as leadership, others view it as authoritarian control that alienated younger wrestlers trying to unwind in their own ways. The most pointed criticisms of Mark Calaway focus on nepotism, particularly involving his wife, Michelle McCool, who married him in 2010 and is accused of receiving undeserved pushes thanks to his influence, including her two-time women's championship reigns from 2008 to 2010 and tag team success with Layla as Lay Cool. While McCool was undeniably talented, critics argue that her accelerated rise and sustained main event status reflect backstage favoritism. These accusations intensified in 2025 when McCool replaced Mickie James on the WWE LFG coaching panel, a show featuring Calaway, leading to speculation that James was sidelined due to backstage politics. McCool also assumed co-hosting duties on Calaway's 6 Feet Under podcast after it was sold to WWE, replacing the original co-host Matt Lita, and her 2025 Hall of Fame induction was linked to Calaway's alleged role on the selection committee, with some observers labeling it nepotism and claiming her solo accolades were inflated by her marriage. Calaway dismissed these claims as absurd on his podcast, saying, "As much clout as I supposedly have, or even if I do, I never ever would have used it for that kind of crap," clarifying that McCool's LFG role stemmed from her prior guest appearances. McCool defended herself as well, asserting her merits, yet the timing of opportunities, the consistent beneficiaries being those in Calaway's immediate circle, and the pattern of accusations make it difficult for many observers to accept these denials at face value. The Undertaker's role in the Bone Street crew, formed in the mid-1990s as a counter to Shawn Michaels' influential group, further highlights his involvement in wrestling's backstage politics, with members including Rikishi, The Godfather, Savio Vega, Henry O. Godwin, Midian, and Crush, who bonded over travel, drinking, card games, and tattoos, many displaying BSK Pride, Inc., including Calaway on his abdomen. What makes The Undertaker's story especially tragic isn't just the abuse of power or systemized hazing, it's how someone who was once a victim of wrestling's political games became one of its most effective operators. The young man devastated by the Hulk Hogan incident absorbed and refined the same tactics, wielding them with ruthless precision for decades, while his unwavering loyalty to Vince McMahon, even amid serious allegations of sexual misconduct, hush money payments, and lawsuits involving abuse and trafficking, further stained his legacy. This loyalty, coupled with his influence over locker room hierarchies and creative decisions, cemented Calloway's role not only as an iconic in-ring performer but also as a central figure in a culture of intimidation, favoritism, and control that left lasting scars on countless wrestlers and the industry itself. Throughout these revelations, The Undertaker maintained an unwavering public loyalty to Vince McMahon, attending high-profile events like the 2025 Super Bowl with him and defending him on his podcast, insisting that McMahon isn't the monster critics claim. Calloway's refusal to work for competitors like AEW, combined with his ongoing influence as WWE's eternal locker room leader and his political associations with McMahon allies, underscores a loyalty that critics argue prioritizes personal allegiance over moral accountability. Even after retiring in 2020, struggling with life outside wrestling, and reflecting on the physical and emotional toll of his decades-long career, Calloway remains a figure whose legacy is as defined by his control, influence, and controversial loyalties as it is by his unparalleled achievements inside the ring. His in-ring legacy is undeniably monumental. The Undertaker, as the Deadman, gave wrestling fans awe-inspiring moments, groundbreaking matches, and a mystique unmatched in the industry, earning accolades from Vince McMahon, Jim Ross, Big Show, and even Guinness for his WrestleMania streak. Yet, separating the character from the man, Mark Calloway, reveals a far darker story. A career spent not only creating legendary performances but also enforcing a culture of intimidation, humiliation, and abuse. From forcing rookies to drink tobacco and physically punishing minor infractions to reducing women to tears over trivial complaints and maintaining unwavering loyalty to a man facing serious criminal allegations, his influence extended far beyond the ring. The Deadman is retired, enshrined in the Hall of Fame, but the harm he inflicted and the toxic culture he entrenched persist in locker rooms today, proof that even the most talented and outwardly respectable figures can wield power in ways with consequences that echo long after the final bell.